Narcissus was an extraordinarily handsome young man. His appearance was so dazzling that from his early years, he attracted the attention and admiration of many people around him. However, it was also said that he was vain, arrogant, and despised those who admired him. He was born as a result of the abuse suffered by his mother Liriope, a beautiful nymph, at the hands of Cepheus, god of the river. The story goes that there was a day when the maiden went to bathe in the waters of the river dominated by Cepheus, and when he saw the beauty of the nymph could not resist, he immediately launched several turbulent waves to catch her and consummate his fervent desire, and time later, the woman gave birth to Narcissus. Being so beautiful, he was pursued by several women who openly proposed to the young man, and they all knew him as the most handsome man, and many other compliments of which he was fully deserving. But he was never interested in any of them, and in time it became common for him to reject any beautiful woman who came his way. For Narcissus, nothing was good enough, or anything was a match for her beauty, and although he did not know her face, since he had never seen her reflection, he knew that she was a beautiful being. So, in the same way that women and men loved him, they were rejected in the face of his arrogance. Cepheus wanted to know the destiny of his son, so he turned to an oracle in search of the necessary knowledge. This one responded to his doubts by saying, "Narcissus will live long as he never looks at his reflection." Before these affirmations, the god of the river forbade his beloved son to see his reflection, ordering him to eliminate all the mirrors and objects that surrounded the boy that could put his life at risk. Time passed, and for the handsome man, there was no other being in his likeness who could conquer him. However, a beautiful young woman one day tried the nymph Echo. It is said that the maiden had a beautiful gift, which was to speak the most beautiful words ever mentioned. This gift was recognized by Zeus, who went to the nymph to distract his wife, Hera, while he went out to court other women. But one day, unfortunately for the nymph, Hera had become aware of Zeus' plans and who was acting as his accomplice. The goddess was so upset that, blinded by anger, she decided to punish her by taking away the beautiful gift she possessed. In addition, she condemned her to repeat forever the last words spoken by anyone who crossed her path. After this, Echo did not feel herself to be the same. Her days were filled with sadness, and she distanced herself from everyone, for she could only repeat the last word they said to her. Echo became so distant from everyone that every day the places she walked through were shrouded in a resounding silence. But one day, to her surprise, the nymph came across Narcissus, a beautiful young man who passed by walking aimlessly. When she saw him, she marveled at his extreme beauty. Her eyes had never seen such a divine being like him, and as much as she wished to be in his arms, she could not get close to him. Echo was so terrified of seeing him that all she could do was repeat the last word she said to herself, and the fear of rejection was enormous. From that day on, Echo fell deeply in love with Narcissus and followed him silently wherever he went. For several days she achieved her goal, admiring him from afar without her beloved noticing her presence. But during one of the walks of the slender boy, the nymph made a big mistake. Echo did not notice some branches on the ground and inadvertently stepped on them, warning Narcissus of her presence. At that moment, the boy became defensive, and with a very imposing voice shouted, "Is anyone here?" And Echo answered, "Here, here." Puzzled by the answer the young man said to him, "Then come here and show yourself." Seeing that the man was in a very serious posture, the nymph decided to come out of her hiding place with open arms, and with the hope of being able to embrace such a beautiful young man, but he turned away bitterly. In this disastrous predicament, she asked the animals of the forest to help her express her feelings for him, since she thought that if she explained everything she felt, he would understand and reciprocate. She did so, and after a few long minutes, she managed to make herself understood by the presumptuous boy, declaring her love for him. However, he burst out laughing without stopping, because as always, he thought that the nymph was not up to the level of such a beautiful man. Echo, devastated by the actions of her beloved, ran aimlessly without looking back, fled as far as she could with a broken heart, like all those who declared their love to this unattainable being. Finally, wrapped in tears, The nymph entered a dark cave where she would stay forever, and there she vanished, leaving only her voice, condemned to repeat the last word of the one who spoke to her. For several years, the boy was protected by his father, before the prophecy that condemned him. However, one tragic day, the young man saw his end. A beautiful nymph, tired of Narcissus' arrogance, the constant rejections, and the hateful ego he possessed, cried out to the gods so that now he would be the one to feel the same rejection as his admirers. The maiden pleaded that, just as he had rejected so many people throughout his life, and had broken the hearts of many, so too should he suffer for the great ego he possessed. This cry reached the ears of the most righteous goddess, Nemesis. She is considered the goddess of justice, balance, solidarity, and above all vengeance. It is even said that she dispensed justice on all those who were vain, and for that very reason, she took notice of the arrogant Ephesus. The punishment of the hateful boy was so well planned that no one expected it. The goddess enchanted the waters through which the son of Cepheus passed, so that as soon as he looked at his reflection, he would fall deeply in love with himself. And so it was, during one of his walks along the banks of a river, the young man could finally see his reflection, admiring a beauty hitherto unknown to him. He fell in love instantly. He had been enchanted with his image, and said he had found what he had never seen in anyone, a great beauty, so delicate and pure that no one could ever possess. After having met his reflection for the first time, there was nothing but anguish in his heart, because no matter how hard he tried to embrace his reflection, he simply could not do it. That was how Narcissus' punishment began, because he could not give the love he desired to his reflection. He was overwhelmed by sadness, and at that moment, he had no consolation because, for the first time, he was suffering from love with a broken heart. His sadness for not having his loved one led him to the conclusion to take his own life in the face of such suffering, since he could not live in a world where his love was simply impossible. There he fell dead on the bank of the river, where he met love, heartbreak, and death for the first time. In the place where his body lay, beautiful flowers grew, impeccable, with a pleasant aroma, which would take the name of the one who was once the most beautiful man on earth.